Huntsville is a very multiracial, multicultural society. He holds major research grants from the MacArthur Foundation, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Kaufman Foundation. In 2006, Dr. Boston was awarded Georgia Tech's Ivan Allen College Legacy Award, given annually to the faculty who exhibits the most exemplary research and community service. And I will say, on a personal note, I worked with Dr. Boston's wife, Catherine Ross, 10 years ago on the whole Atlanta congestion issue, and he has a very wonderful better half, as well as all of his
she might
great...
disagree with me.
So let's hear from Dr. Boston, and then we'll have a little discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary Conte, and thank all of you for coming. And let me just say that I thank all of you because you are citizens of the state of North Carolina. I thank you for allowing both me and my company, as well as the group of individuals and companies that I teamed with, the unique opportunity of conducting the disparity study on your behalf. And it is, and it was, and it continues to be a unique opportunity. And I want to just share with you both my perspective on why it is such a unique opportunity, and the opportunity that it creates to raise contracting in the state to an even higher level. And secondly, I want to go through the actual detailed findings of the study. But let me start, first of all, by indicating that the results of the study were not just results that were generated by my company alone. I work with a number of other companies in doing this, and I don't see any representatives of those companies here, but I worked with Holland & Knight, which is a major law firm. The law firm is located, while I worked with the partner, the general partner in Atlanta. The law firm is an international law firm. They conducted the legal analysis that is so important to conducting these studies. Secondly, I work with Ken Wheaton and Associates. Ken Wheaton is located here in North Carolina. He has several offices here, and he was responsible for conducting a lot of the anecdotal interviews and collecting anecdotal and qualitative evidence involved in the study. I work with Dr. Jim Johnson, who is a chaired professor of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and Alan Parnell, who also were involved in collecting qualitative information. And so there was a team of individuals involved. And so on behalf of that team, I thank you. Secondly, I want to thank all of the contractors. Some of you may have been involved in that, but we, as a part of conducting the study, we did a number of things. In addition to looking at all of the quantitative data from fiscal year 2004 all the way through fiscal year 2008, we also issued surveys to randomly selected contractors. There were some 338 who responded, and that gave us that avenue of collecting information. And then in addition to that, we randomly selected 50 contractors for personal interviews that were conducted by the law firm. In addition to that, we conducted also focus groups in 14 locations across the state. And then finally, we also conducted public hearings in about 11 locations. So we tried to create the opportunity and vehicle to get a great deal of input, both quantitatively and qualitatively. And again, so that input, again, on behalf of those individuals, I want to thank those individuals. We had an advisory committee that we periodically presented the results to and progress reports. And that advisory committee was very helpful in giving us feedback and in responding to some of the preliminary findings and giving us additional directions that we should look in order to complete the study. And then I want to thank also Secretary Conte and his staff, the senior management at the Department of Transportation. And I will tell you honestly, and I think I should say this because it is true, that it's rare that as a consultant, particularly doing disparity studies, it's rare that I have the opportunity to work with an organization where you have the support of the study from the very top level all the way down through the organization. That's rare. Usually we go in and we are running into all kinds of problems. But that wasn't the case, and it really facilitated us collecting the data and analyzing what we did analyze. So I want to, again, I thank them, and particularly Terry Canales, for facilitating all of the data requests. All right, so that's that part of it. Now let me get to what I'm going to present to you, and I'm going to go into some of the details and information. I'm not going to get buried in the details and information, but if you have questions about that, I will go into that in more detail. All right, I said at the beginning that a state disparity study provides a very unique opportunity, a unique development opportunity. Why is that? Well, it's for a number of reasons. One is that it allows you to remedy the effects of current and past discrimination. It is a vehicle for doing that, a legally constituted vehicle for doing that. Secondly, it provides an opportunity, particularly if you're dealing with the state transportation agency, it provides the opportunity, if it's done correctly, for you to create a pool of contractors that potentially can have a very large economic impact on the state. In one of the studies I recently completed for the Congressional Black Caucus, I looked particularly at the SDB program. Many of you may know it as the 8A program. It's somewhat related. And there were some 6,500 contractors in that program. And one of the questions was, what is the economic impact of those individuals in those companies? Well, we found that annual economic impact was about $6 billion, and they were creating 126,000 jobs. So that, again, it has the capacity to create an enormous economic impact. And then finally, by codifying fair, open contracting practices, you're not only enhancing diversity, but you're also creating the opportunity whereby all of the resources in the state can fulfill their potential. So that's why it's such an important development opportunity. Now, let me start by, and I'm going to just bear with me. I'm going to talk about three things. One is, I want to talk first of all about sort of the historical conditions that lead up to why disparity studies are important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we ought to understand what that historical landscape is. Secondly, I'm going to go into some of the detailed findings of the study. And then thirdly, I'm going to spend some time talking about the recommendations themselves. All right. Now, what does it take in order to conduct a disparity study? Well, the first thing it takes is an appreciation of economic history and the conditions that have existed and the environment that has existed that has created inequity along the basis of race or along the basis of gender. So one has to understand that it is not just a contemporary dynamic, but it's also a historical dynamic. Secondly, it takes a willingness to find the facts, identify the facts, and present the facts as you find them, right? Stepping aside, stepping back from whatever your personal biases may be. Thirdly, it takes an ability to both identify and analyze discrimination both statistically and qualitatively. So it's not just statistical evidence that is required in conducting a disparity study, but you also collect qualitative evidence. And as I mentioned earlier, the focus groups, the survey research, the public hearings, all of those were various forms with which we use to supplement the quantitative data. Of course, it involves understanding the case law, which I cannot say enough about, but I'm not going to go into that. I will, if you have questions, though, address those questions. And so those are the major things that it takes. All right. What are then, broadly speaking, and this is not specifically aimed at NCDOT, but broadly speaking, what are some of the facts as we know them? Now, and I say this from having conducted disparity studies for agencies both at the state level and the federal level and the local level. And here's what we find in general. In general, we find that minority contractors are a much higher percentage of the contractors and vendors that pursue public sector work than is their representation in the general population. We find that over and over and over again. And the reason for that is they generally run into all kinds of discriminatory barriers in the private sector, so that it becomes very important that opportunities in the state and other public sector organizations are made available. For example, blacks, if you look at federal government contracting among some 25,000 contractors, or 45,000 in general, blacks, while they're 5% of all of the businesses in the country, they're 15% of all federal government contractors. Hispanics, about 7% of all contractors in the country, the 11%